So welcome again, everyone, to our webinar on essential impact metrics to drive nature investments. And as you can see on the next slide, so before we jump right into the topic, let me ask, why are we all here today? So we already had that question in the chat already. And I think it's because we all, at least for Alex, Benjamin, my co-hosts today, I can tell that. I think it's because we all share a common goal to create solutions that address the climate and biodiversity crisis without falling into traps like greenwashing or inefficiency as the CO2 market has done in the past. As you see here on the next slide. So because, or as you should see, because, yeah, and even the next one, sorry, I think it's a bit delayed for me. So while these headlines you're all familiar with, because in the past, especially in 2023, but also since then and prior to that, so we all know these headlines. They are telling a very powerful story. So they highlight the challenges we face in this sector. So namely, as we've summarized on the next chart, trust issues, low quality projects, lack of transparency, and uncertainty of what and how to measure. And yeah, I think on all four of these, I think we don't have the answer all yet, because otherwise we wouldn't have to be here. But I think today our goal is definitely to come a bit closer to finding an answer here and to bringing more transparency into this. So what are we looking at today? Having a brief view of the agenda. So there was this word in the invitation, NatureLink, when you look on the next slide. So I will tell you in the beginning, I will tell you a bit about what is NatureLink. Then my colleague Ben, you will meet in a second. He will tell you about quality standards for nature restoration projects. So really like the standards of the projects. And then it's about like the transparency issue. Alex Watson from explorer.land will tell us about geo-transparency. And afterwards, we will have a Q&A session. But so you're open to keep your questions until the very end, but please also feel free while we are talking and while the question is popping to your hand, just put the question in the chat and then we can go through it in the end. So on the next slide, you see my co-host today. So Benjamin Kowalski, Head of Science from the Future Forest Initiative, and Alex Watson. So maybe the mic is yours, the stage is yours, Ben and Alex, maybe you briefly introduce yourself.
Gladly. Thank you, Susanne. Ben Kowalski. I have a background in forestry and agricultural economics. And together with Susanne, I'm part of the Future Forest Initiative. And we combine startup-driven innovation with the forest sector to really push forward or reimagine the way we do forestry in the field. And I'll have the chance to talk more in a few minutes. So I hand over to Alex.
Yeah, thank you. I also have a forestry background in common with Ben. We're trying to bring transparency into the sector for the past 14 years with geospatial and data tools. And today I want to show you what possibilities exist in that space and how these tools can help to adopt and bring more investment from the corporate space into the forest restoration space.
Great, thanks to both of you. And as I haven't introduced myself, so I also have a forestry background. So that's what Ben and Alex and I have in common. And yes, Ben has mentioned I'm working for the Future Forest Initiative. So let's jump right into the topic. So what is this NatureLink on the next slide? So basically, it's a side event to the Future Forest Forum. And what is the Future Forest Forum, for those of you who haven't heard it? So it will take place actually already for the 5th time next year, beginning of September, where 350 to 400 persons from the field of forestry, nature-based solutions, startups, forest owners, but also corporates and scientists and investors come together to develop and discuss and inspire each other, most importantly, to new solutions in the context of forestry, nature, compensation, and climate. And so the NatureLink pavilion is like a side event to that, in so in the same venue, but in a special location there. And particularly within the NatureLink, we are trying to bring together corporate sustainability officers on the one side from leading European companies with project developers and nature and tech monitoring startups. This all takes place in a great venue. You already see it on this small picture. So it's a Grand Castle in Blankenburg in Harz. And here on the slide, you see some impressions of the Future Forest Forum itself and some highlights. So it's a two-day event with 350 participants. We have 3 stages, 1 exhibition, and as we also want to go into the forest during that event, so there are around 6 excursions. And yes, here you see already the NatureLink pavilion itself, and you get some impressions of the overall event. And yes, you see here, developers or startups get the opportunity to present themselves like in the field, so that you can grasp what they're already doing. But coming back to the initial question on which will be my last slide. So what really is the NatureLink? And actually right now, so we already did it this year at this Future Forest Forum, but it definitely won't be the same, because we want to find an answer on that question together with you, as we see it like a co-creational or collaborative project, because we really believe that together we have the opportunity to redefine what it looks like and to move even beyond the headlines that we saw before, beyond greenwashing, scandals, etc. And so while this is really the first webinar on this topic and only a first baby step onto the journey, we really invite you to co-create also the program with us. You're invited to give us insights. If you say, hey, this would be interesting, and I think this person would be beneficial to that event, we're really looking forward to get your input on that as well. And by that, when we jump to the next slide, so today's session is built on 3 pillars. So I'm done with introducing you to the NatureLink format, which is a yearly event to meet and connect like-minded people. And now I'm handing over to Ben to give you more insights about the framework.
Thank you very much, Susanne. Please go to the next slide. Over the next 15 minutes, I'm gonna talk a bit about how we might ensure transparency and quality in nature restoration or compensation projects in the future. And importantly, we focus on proving that what we do out there in nature is successful. This is the focus of these impact metrics that we're gonna talk about. And also, I have to disappoint you from the start, because of course we don't have the final answer to these questions, nor do we have the perfect solution. The topic of quality and transparency is evolving rapidly and dynamically, and it's gonna do so over the next years as well. So what we can do today is showcase the current focus of the discussion and focus on a few solutions that are likely to be relevant over the next years and that are likely to be implemented. Where's our knowledge coming from? Well, currently we are in an innovation and research project together with the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research. And in this project, the Amarina project, we are engaging with policymakers and are identifying what needs to be measured in nature to meet legal and scientific requirements. So we are also exploring how to measure that, what needs to be measured with new technologies in a sufficiently granular and precise way, while keeping the costs as low as possible. And in essence, the main question we are dealing with is, what do we need to measure? How do we need to measure it? And how can we use this to reliably evaluate the success of restoration or compensation projects? And today I'm just going to focus on 2 or 3 main findings that we would like to share with you. And in the end, show you how we plan to operationalize that. And this is a part where you can also cooperate with us if you want to do so. Basically, our research started with the idea that a highly dynamic and evolving environment, like CSR reporting, doesn't really go well along with the long-term strategic planning of corporates. So our focus was to find guidelines for measuring transparency, for measuring quality that are valid over the next years or at least the next decade. And this is where we build our research on. And well, we found guidelines that are based or derived from the European Nature Restoration Law, which was adopted in summer 24, last summer. And please, next slide. If you don't know what the Nature Restoration Law is about, well, it basically provides a legal framework for reporting on and evaluating the state of our ecosystems, at least in Europe. So its primary goal is to establish tools to determine whether the condition of our ecosystems is improving or deteriorating. And the law is full of interesting stuff. It offers guidance on the correct management interventions. But what's relevant for us when we look at impact metrics is that it offers a set of indicators that from EU legislation's point of view have to be measured to be able to reliably say something about the state of the ecosystems and where they're going. And these indicators are not only politically, but also scientifically accepted. And they thus offer an objective and legally binding basis, which is going to be stable over the next years. And this is the starting point. I will talk about these indicators in a bit, but just keep this in mind. Over the next 6 years, the European Union, the member states have to come up with restoration plans, find out how they're going to put this law into practice, how they're going to monitor large areas on a constant basis. And the process, there will be an ongoing adaptation process. The indicators mentioned here will likely remain stable. They may be complemented by additional indicators. We don't know yet, but this is a strong basis that we can work with if we want politically accepted, stable impact matrices. So, and before I now jump to the indicators, please go to the next slide, because what was exciting about this law is that it has a big overlap with corporate sustainability reporting, as well as the emerging biodiversity credit markets or nature credit markets, as Ursula von der Leyen mentioned or called it recently. And that overlap is that all three parts of the puzzle measure ecosystem condition. And this ecosystem condition is a big word. It's usually divided into ecosystem composition, ecosystem structure, ecosystem function. And until recently, until the adoption of the Nature Restoration Law, it was a big word that everyone filled with his own idea, because you can measure the most different aspects and sell it as ecosystem condition. But now, using the Nature Restoration Law, we have a fixed set of, in the case of forestry, 8 indicators that describe ecosystem condition. And that means if you as a project developer or as a corporate report on these indicators, you get information that you can use for various purposes. You can use it for compensation and CSR reporting, and you may be able to use it for voluntary biodiversity markets that are emerging at the moment. So let's jump to the next slide and take a look at these indicators that the law asks us to measure in future. And I separated them roughly on the 3 categories I mentioned before, and they are the common forest bird index. They are tree species diversity in general, but also the share or the question of if native tree species are dominant. We have standing deadwood and lying deadwood, the unevenness of the age structure and the forest connectivity in general, and the stock of organic carbon. So these are more precise indicators that measure the state of nature. They can still be interpreted in different ways. We're going to see where in future it's going. The Nature Restoration Law provides a methodology of minimum requirements that have to be measured. But I think we can all agree that in the future, we won't have individual experts that go out into the forests, into the ecosystems and assess it on their own. We don't have sufficient experts, and we don't have the cash to do so. But we have new technologies that are arising at the moment. We've got startups that are trying out new tools that allow us to measure the state of the ecosystems at scale, at relatively cheap costs. At least that is the goal. Please jump to the next slide, where I give a short overview of these technologies, which from our point of view will play a role over the next years. We don't know if one of these technologies will be able to measure all of the indicators or a majority of them, but from this pool of new technologies, we're sure that some relevant solutions will emerge. For example, LiDAR, which is very well suited to measure the complexity and structure of ecosystems. Hyperspectral imaging as well is well suited to measure diversity and vitality of plants. However, at the moment, I think the cheapest camera is still 50,000 euro. We will see if this becomes cheaper in the future. Maybe we stick with LiDAR or just normal RGB measuring. We have tools like environmental DNA, which are well suited to get an idea of general biodiversity, but especially it might be a tool to understand what's going on in the soil, how diverse the soil life is and the processes in the soils. I think really well established is bioacoustics, where you combine microphones with artificial intelligence to measure birds, insect diversity, and of course, satellites, remote sensing will become more and more important with rising quality and number of satellites up there. We believe that large-scale observations will be combined with local sensors that calibrate these large-scale data. So to provide a good measurement of the indicators mentioned before. Gas sensors are also interesting. They are used at the moment to detect forest fires very early on. We might use them in different ways in the future to assess changes in the air in forests. Different things are happening. You see a few pictures from our last forum where we played with those technologies. And if you now jump to the next slide, we are gonna try out a large number of these technologies over the next year. And I invite you, if you are able to travel to Europe, Germany, to join our research and innovation partnership. If not, we will be able to report our results in September or later on this year. So in January, we're going to publish a call for innovators, a call for startups that are able to measure the indicators before, that are offering monitoring, reporting, verification solutions. And we're going to invite them over to 2 regions in the Harz Mountains and in the Sauerland, where we're going to conduct field trials to compare the methods, to check out how easily they can be used by practitioners, by foresters, by how expensive they are. And we're going to present the results at the next forum, at the NatureLink. And any partner who joins us can, of course, present his or her results as well. If you're interested in joining this alliance, contact us via this QR code. Corporate partners will receive like 9 months of curated social media content, first access to the results and the startups. And yeah, we just want to create an alliance that pushes this topic of quality and transparency forward, that develops a check framework, quality check framework, to really evaluate projects. And this is the second pillar of our presentation today. And I'm really happy that our third pillar, that Alex will present to you now, is there because if you have these amazing projects, you as a project developer or a corporate have to show the results, the success of your measures. And this is what Alexander will talk about. He has an amazing tool which highlights that, and I'm happy to hand over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Ben, for this super interesting input. So I'm trying to fill out the third pillar now. I want to take a few minutes to really think about the characteristics of transparency, because this is what we also saw in the beginning. No transparency had led to fraud, greenwashing, and basically damaging the reputation of the entire market because it creates mistrust. So no one wants to invest into a market that just fails. So I created a few slides here on describing this kind of transparency, the characteristics. So in this case, there is no transparency. Let me check here now. I can move forward. But yeah, as an answer, there were some attempts to create kind of partial transparency, showing some good things that went nice, but still hiding the things that going wrong. So this will also not lead to recovery and to rebuilding of trust. The next attempt that then occurred, and where we are full in at the moment, is what I call indirect transparency. So that you have stakeholder on the one side, you have the project on the other side, and the information connected between the stakeholder and the project through a certifier. But still, as we could see, also in the introduction, there have been scams, for example, in FSC certified projects, but also in carbon projects, specifically in REDD+ projects. So we need to think about a different kind of transparency. And with this webinar, we also want to argue for what we call full transparency, to really remove the borders between the stakeholders and the projects. So because only this will, on one hand, force the projects to deliver better. So because deviations from the past could be detected much earlier. And yeah, stakeholders, investors, the public really deserve to get the full picture. And I think not always everything can happen well, and sometimes there are deviations. But I think it's important to take everyone onto a fair and transparent journey. And we believe if that could be achieved, then much more money that's currently waiting and sitting there could be directed towards nature restoration projects and conservation. And I think with that, we have the possibility to lift up the fog a bit and make nature restorations more attractive. But now, as we go towards transparency, and I want to have a specific look at the dimensions of transparency that make a good project. Because there are different levels. So like what we call geo-transparency, about the project location, where it is, the expansion of a project and the activities that take place. There's the regulatory compliance, where we need transparency, things that also Ben already touched on. There's the risk management transparency, so we really have to understand where are the risks and what management is in place to avoid or reduce the risks, how operations are set up, and of course also the financial transparency. In the past, often geo-transparency have been neglected, although it's a very important requirement for the other transparency dimensions. So if we, for example, look at the project location, so the geo-transparency, we have information where's happening what and when. So for example, if you plant trees, where are they planted? What trees are planted and at which point in time have they been planted? And this has an implication also on the other levels of transparency. So let's think about land ownership or baseline conditions for carbon projects. The geolocation, the geotransparency has an important role to play here. The same with risk management. So, for example, detecting forest fire, deforestation, and other encroachments into a forest parcel requires also geo-information. Then to monitor a project sufficiently, how it evolves or not evolves, status of the verification. Again, this needs geolocation. And finally, also how we allocate resources. So what kind of resources we allocate to achieve which outcome and impact in the field. All is connected very strongly to the geotransparency. And yeah, we have seen that geo-transparency has been neglected in the past because it was easy to sell an investment into forest with nice pictures on Instagram and today X and other social media platforms. But it's more difficult to have like a geo-transparent, rigorous project implemented. See, one picture is not really showing up. I want to show now this slide because we see that there is some good news in the market. Also, big corporates have started to take transparency, including geo-transparency, much more seriously because there have been scams. And let's say the biggest threat a big corporate like Yves, Laurent, Volkswagen, we know, are facing are reputational risks. And by elevating transparency and quality within projects, you avoid reputational risks. So this is a very important issue for projects. I will dive into these examples in a minute. But also on the project side, we see good news. More and more project developers have understood that transparency, geo-transparency, is a competitive advantage if you can play it well. So if you can implement a high level of transparency, this will help your fundraising process because corporate potential funders and partners can better assess your investment or funding opportunity through a map in space and time. And for example, check out what has been planted or restored, where it has happened on the ground, and potentially also at which point in time. And yeah, I think with this transparent, rigorous process, we can rebuild the needed trust so that more funding is flowing into the restoration space. I'm now going to show you live on how geo-transparency can be implemented. I put here just a simplified overview of potential transparency components. We might also call them views on a project that help to reveal the impact that a project has on the ground. I'm now jumping into one project. So the first thing what I want to show is the possibility of geolocated news posts. So imagine you have a project and you install certain environmental impact measures there that should improve wildlife. You can put a camera trap in the field. You can take the photos and potentially see that the measures you have implemented have led to an increase of biodiversity in the project areas you're working on. So this is a very simple thing, quite obvious thing, where you can document in a transparent way that the impact you try to achieve has improved the project. Another view that might help are the data layers. So we have integrated in our geospatial platform many data layers, dozens of data layers, and by activating, for example, the tree height, you can analyze how far the restoration activities have evolved. So that you can see here, the yellow side is over 20 meters, the deep purple is just around 1 meter. And basically all the entire location, the tree height has been measured, so you can see the impact in terms of tree height. But there are also other visual possibilities to have a look at projects and the implementation. I just picked out the Yves Laurent rewilding initiative, where they mapped out different projects with high resolution drone imagery. In this case, it's like an ornamental garden. where they have added a drone map. So I'm showing you the project first now just on a satellite map. So it looks a little bit blurry because I zoomed in quite significantly. But if I now switch on the drone image, you can really see what has been implemented. So you can zoom in quite far into the project. You can even see the watering pipes lying on the ground. This is another example of how you can create like visual evidence, not just with blog posts, not just with data, but through high resolution images. A third way to create more geotransparency, so another way to create this geotransparency is through satellite timelines. So this is a project developed by CarbonStack in the Harz and other regions in Germany. And you know, there was some heavy destruction through the pine beetle, where entire areas have been deforested. So we can show these deforested areas by activating tree cover loss for this location. So you see all what is dark red is recently deforested. The base map has not yet been updated with this data, but by activating a satellite timeline for this location, we can see how these areas have been deforested. So here you see the deforested areas, and they correspond quite good with the data of the deforested areas. And yeah, I can then go potentially back in time toward the good old times when the forest was still standing. But yeah, that's basically the baseline here for a carbon project. The trees have died and are now restored again. Yeah, so these have been some simple tools accessible basically for everyone. And finally, we're coming to the situation that a project might be ready for investment. So let's assume you have done your homework. You as a project developer have developed a transparent map, a presentation of your project. You have created a nice business plan that describes how you will allocate your resources in space and time in order to have an impact on the ground. We have developed a funding opportunity, so basically a possibility to connect your project to your investment pitch and make it publicly available. And I will show that to you here live. So it's every project that has like a geo-transparent profile, you also have the possibility to create a funding pitch. So let's go here to one project in Portugal. You can search via the map or through the search engine. And then you see this restoration project here in Portugal is looking just for $10,000 US to restore forest ecosystems in southern Portugal. So you have more information about the location, about the impact, the activities. You can reach out to the project directly, and more, you can see the project presentation again in a transparent way. So you have the possibility to explore and to see what's going on in the project. Yeah, on the ground, you see, you can check out the track record and so on. Yeah, and yeah, sorry, no, I have my point here. Yeah, when we speak about funding of projects, this is like a simple way to enable projects to pitch their investment opportunity to a broad audience. And yeah, that was my input for the moment. I think we can now move over to the Q&A session.
Great. Thank you, Ben and Alex. Yes, I think there is one Q&A or one question I see right from the chat. So Marie Adele is asking, how is the tree height measured? I guess that goes to Alex, and I guess I know the answer, but yeah, it goes to you.
So to be really honest, I don't know how that in detail works. So it's, as I understood, a combined data set from different sources, from Sentinel with radar data, with multispectral data, which is all merged together and then calculated in a quite complex process. For each data layer, we have integrated the original sources where you can read in detail about the producers of these data sets.
And that the second I see that someone from your team, Alex, explained it in more detail than you just did. But
Okay.
thanks for that. Cool. So if you want to have, if you can't be bothered typing, just unmute yourself and just jump in directly, or I guess you can also like raise your hand, but you can also just ask directly. Oh, and I'm getting bothered by these AI note takers that think it's quiet in here. Okay. So then maybe one question going to Ben. How to phrase it? Maybe in very simple words, so that everyone can understand it. So what do you think when you're not like talking about biodiversity markets or nature credits? So what exactly is the difference to CO2 credits? Or how do you see the difference in the market?
I see the major difference in the CO2 market as it's now is like the first test version, the Wild West. And now the next generation of markets for ecosystem services will be of higher quality and higher transparency. You know, the current CO2 market is based on predictions. If I plant that and that many trees, so and so many tons CO2 will be bound in the trees in 30 years, which is a very brave statement in times of dynamic climate change. What's going on right now is that we're all moving towards an outcome-based market that is based on measurements of what's actually happening in the field. And I think the most important difference, if we want to avoid greenwashing scandals, is to be truly transparent about what we can say about the state of the ecosystem and what we cannot yet say. So to show this in this field, we can prove is developing in a good way. And here we still have to find new solutions. I think this is something that will develop over the next years because no one wants scandals anymore. And this is the focus for the next years.
Cool. Thank you. Are there anyone wants to jump in with a question, or shall I continue raising mine? Then maybe one to Alex. I imagine, or putting myself into a corporate's shoes, or into a project developer's shoes, I can imagine maybe I want to do restoration projects, but maybe I don't want to have high resolution drone images of my own property or the area I'm developing. So is that a risk as well, or what other risks do you see in that geo-transparent area?
Yeah, well, I would say for sure it is a risk because transparency can always be a risk. On the one hand, because you see problems early, but on the other hand, if you co-develop and co-create a project right from the beginning, so where you build like a trust between the project developer and the corporates, and you have transparency measures implemented at an early stage, you can also detect risks much earlier and avoid, let's say, the full burnout and that the big problems really arise. So if you see, I don't know, and if you see an early deforestation occurring at the edges, so you can intervene at an early stage. And I think the risk of not having transparency is much higher than having full transparency implemented.
Yeah. And I see one camera went on, so maybe that's a sign for raising a question.
Hi, hello, all. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, yes, hello. Yes, I have I'm developed the project here for a long time in the platform on explorer.land. And one of the things is also difficult is as we are so involved with the project that we have time and resources to use the features and become also more transparent with the project that we have. And that's the thing. Even I spoken with Patrick, the CEO. That yeah, one thing is very important. We can have some resources to help us to we can use the tool for our advantage with all the full framework that they has. That's the thing from our side. Yeah.
Maybe I can quickly answer. Yes, communication is effort and work, and it's only worth for a small organization if it results in funding, because the money is not needed to make fancy communication. The money is needed to do the restoration on the ground. Yeah, it's really difficult. So with Explorer, we try to offer a simple communication solution, link it now to the funding opportunity to have, let's say, technology stack in your hand that helps you to connect with funders, be it donors or corporate funders, to support your work. And if your work then is sufficiently funded, you might also have a little bit more time and resources to also build out the communication, because you can use a geo-transparent communication in different phases. In the beginning for your fundraising, so to really show the track record and what you're doing. And then at a later stage, as soon as you have received funding, you can also use it for reporting. However, we need to create more resources also to help you to make full use of the tool. So to have maybe more tutorials and easy accessible information. That answered your question.
Well, thanks for that. There's one in the chat from Anna. Are all the necessary methodologies established for this purpose? I think that could go to both of you, but maybe let's start with Ben.
Which purpose? I would say no, because it's an ongoing journey. Like, we have tools that are more greenwashing proof than the existing CO2 market, which we can use, which we are using. But it will be an ongoing discussion of what actually should be measured and how it's measured. But that's why I think transparency is so important, that we just have to be better than the existing system and say we're implementing a continuous improvement process. Our methodologies will get better and better over the years. We will have new methodologies. We will get better understanding of the ecosystems. So we shouldn't consider this as a process that will stop one day and then we have the final solution. I think it will be continuously improving. And now's the time where many people, the regulatory side, the technological side, the ecologists, join forces and start developing new methodologies. So it's a great time to try out something new. And it's a time where you may benefit if you are brave as a company and take a pioneer role in this, or as a project developer. But as Alex said, there's also risk in transparency, and we have to find ways to balance this. And like, we as Future Forest Forum have a platform where I think we should only allow people to enter that stage who are bravely talking about their transparency, what they're actually doing, who are open about this. We have to give them a fighting chance compared to other people who are just selling bullshit. And this is the big task for the next years. Don't know, Alex, do you want to add or get your point of view on this?
Yeah, so maybe just one remark is that I think already a lot of data and solutions are out there. So free open source data sets on deforestation, free satellite timelines, and so on. So a lot of information is already there, but it's really now time to use them more actively. And yeah, so the communication side and the monitoring side really have to merge a little bit better, because in the good old times you had like a communication team that did the nice and beautiful communication of the projects and showed the glossy impact progress. And on the other side, you had some nerdy GIS and monitoring people who recorded the data in the field, and no one had access to the information. And I think now it's the time to bring communication and data generation in a consistent way together, so that you not tell a story about a project, but the project and its progress is communicating the story in space and time.
Unfortunately, time isn't over yet. Otherwise, that would have been such a perfect wording for the end. Really like that. But there's another question to Alex in the chat. So regarding the data layers from Regina, do you think that in the future there will be possibilities to get data from fields, bushes, marshlands, wetlands, etc., to compare their progress on biodiversity? Or are the indicators that you've shown, like height and time, not appropriate here?
Yeah, regarding the data layers that we have integrated, we call them thematic data layers, which we have integrated in the Explorer. These are all data layers which have kind of open access license or open source license that allows them to integrate them into our solution. So we don't create the data, we just streaming them in. And as soon as something is available, we will do. There are a few thematic data layers on land use classification and land use change, where you have the land use change over time from 1985 till 2020 or something like that. Yeah, we have to look into detail what kind of information you want to reveal from these data layers.
And I see, thanks, Alex. I see that Manga, I hope I pronounce it correctly. You turned on your video. Is there a question as well?
No, I'm good. I'm with Alex. So part of Open Forest.
You muted yourself, Susanne.
Sorry, thanks. So then I would say that's your last opportunity to ask questions. In the meantime, while you think about smart questions, I will also post our contact details here in the chat, so that if you want, you can reach out to us on LinkedIn. Yeah, and you have it there as well. And yes, exactly, really important information as well. So if you scan in this QR code as well, you should be, as I presented earlier, and you should be interested in like co-develop and co-create the format of the NatureLink Pavilion for 2025 with us, taking place in September. Then just scan that QR code and we will keep you updated. Yes, otherwise here are our contact details. If you like, there should be one question dropping up to Ben this night at 3 a.m. in the morning. Feel free to reach out to him as well. And there's the last question from Manuel, I see. So how many analysis factors can be established for the layers? So I guess that goes to Alex as well. Or to one of your colleagues, if you want to.
I've been muted. Well, so basically there are unlimited. There's a possibility to integrate unlimited data layers. We are currently in the process to also build an application to analyze the data according to a polygon. So if you have an area, at the moment you can show deforestation or the fire that occurs in that area. But with the new geo-analytics tool that we're currently developing, you will also be able to quantify these data, thematic data layers for a certain location.
Thank you. So when there are, I think we can still, Alex, Ben, and I will still remain here for next 5 minutes. So if anyone wants to ask a secret question, you can stay here with us. Otherwise, as mentioned earlier, we will send you a recording within the next days. And thanks for your feedback, Maria Del. Yeah, I hope you've learned something. And as said, so there a lot of questions are still unanswered or open. So looking forward to develop that together with you. Really nice having you. Thanks for attending this and taking the time today.